A couple years ago, I got a haircut, and I said it was around the time when Dirty Dan got his name. He got in big trouble for, who can blame the guy? We all love the taste of that sweet candy. He got in big trouble, and I said, what a shame this is, because I just got the Dan Evans haircut. Well, now, as I always do, as I prepare to go to Cincinnati for the Crunch Time Coaching Tennis Masters Clinic, just in time for the Cincinnati Masters Tennis Tournament, I've got a new haircut. So comment below, which haircut did I get today? Is it the Nick Kyrgios haircut? Is it, as a lady I played in a mixed doubles match once said, the he looks just like Jesus Tsitsipas haircut with those luscious long locks? Is it the favorite here at Coffee Break Tennis, the Roger Federer haircut? Or is it the Benoit Paire haircut? If I see him in Cincinnati, I'm going to track him down. We're going to take a picture next to each other. Today on the show, you may notice I finally strung up this RF97 that I've been hanging on to with no strings for a while. I waited until I saw a special sign to do it. And at the City Open last week in Washington, D.C., we've got a very special sign for the tennis future. We'll talk about that. And of course, we have the Rogers Cup back in Montreal, just like in 2017. We've got the draw from there. We'll go through it. We'll talk about that. And if there is time, we've got a few other things in today's stack of tennis news. We'll get to all of it. We'll do our best, at least, on today's episode of Coffee Break Tennis. Welcome to Coffee Break Tennis, the home for tennis fanatics. Fans of Roger Federer, of course, are welcome here, but we also welcome the Joker faces and the Raw fans as well. I'm your host, Matt Bradshaw, at the helm of Coffee Break Tennis, a tennis education institution where there are no double faults, no unforced errors, and the learning never ever stops. Your tennis IQ, it will go up just because you are here watching this video right now, guaranteed. So in today's tennis news stack, of course, we have, he was the king of Mexico, the champion of Mexico with the big sombrero. Now the champion of DC. Add that to his 2019 resume. Nick Kyrgios has greatly impressed me last week in DC. There were so many big takeaways, and Kyrgios on top right here, our first thing up, is saying all the right things. Before we get into anything, though, let me go through three things really quick. I just realized I came up with that a while, an hour ago. I was thinking of three things, and I only remember two of them. So maybe it's only two things. I'll probably remember by the time we get to the third thing. Number one, Nick Kyrgios' serve is the best, besides Roger Federer's, maybe better than Roger Federer's, at least if you weigh in the pure raw power that he has. But one of the things that was interesting at the tournament, they would do it a lot in the Tsitsipas match on Tennis Channel. Jim Courier was pointing it out a lot, credit to him. And also in the final against the BS Russian, Danny Medvedev, which, aren't you a little bit sad we didn't get to see Tsitsipas and the guy he called the BS Russian play, Medvedev, in the final? Wouldn't that have been a lot of fun? But you can't complain because Nick Kyrgios brings more fun to tennis matches than any player in the history of the sport. Maybe. He brings more craziness, at least. My number one thing is that you saw he had a wrap on the arm. He had something on the knee. He was having back issues in the final with Medvedev. All kinds of problems for Nick Kyrgios. And you kept seeing Jim Courier point out in Tennis Channel stats, graphics people put it on the screen, that as he went through the match, his serve speeds were coming down drastically, especially if your back is... Oh, here comes Mr. Goat. I don't know if you can hear his little footsteps tapping. Mr. Goat just strolled by right here, very slowly, like a big hunter cat. I think he's inspecting the area for rodents. Thank you, Mr. Goat, for your service. Maybe he'll pop in a little later. Anyways, we kept seeing the serve speeds drop dramatically, and I was just saying, if your back is hurting, it's really hard to produce power. Yet Nick Kyrgios still hitting tons of aces. Here he comes. Hello, Mr. Goat. Welcome to the show. He's wondering where the goat boat is. So the serve speeds kept coming down, and he was still popping off all the aces. And that just goes to show you the thing they always say about Roger Federer, not the biggest serve, but the best accuracy, the best spot server around, hitting tons of aces, just like, you might see someone like a John Isner, who can hit spots as well, those big servers. But they also need that big power a lot of time. Nick Kyrgios showed us that he can hit the spots and the different spins, and he doesn't have to rely on the 135. He was doing it with 115. Nick Kyrgios was hitting serves at 105 that were aces. So that's my number one thing to point out right away, because that is huge. And that tells us that someone like a Nick Kyrgios could have some serious staying power if he gets serious enough about his game, about his tennis career, that even as he gets into his 30s, if he were to take care of his body well enough to not fall apart out there, and the power goes down, not because he's injured or he's nursing a little injury that's, not something full-blown, but still an issue. If he's just losing power because he's getting older, he's got the kind of accuracy on the serve that makes it a weapon for life. Number two thing, I guess, goes to that same kind of deal as well. We saw Kyrgios, he hits so many trick shots and drop shots out of nowhere. And, sometimes people think, like, what is he, just bored? Sometimes it's a smart thing to do, like when Rafa's standing all the way back at the fence. Pretty smart play. But another time to do it is if you're getting outplayed and you got to change up the strategy, or maybe you're a little hurt and you got to shorten up points. That's kind of what we see with Roger Federer a lot of times. He'll use it to kind of bail out of a point, and not in a negative way. By the way, let me make sure I still got the Benoit Paire collar pop going, which I'm a big fan of if you didn't know. Not a bailout like you get nervous. It's a smart bailout. It's a calculated move when Federer does it, because you kind of sense, okay, I'm way behind at this point. I'm expending a lot of energy. I've got the hands to pull off a shot like this. Let's just go for it. If I make it, great. If I don't, we need to start over anyways, because this point has gotten out of hand. Nick Kyrgios is a guy who's got hands like that. He's got world-class touch and feel, and he can execute these shots as well as anyone. And sometimes he does it, and it kind of seems like a dumb time to do it. He's getting pretty good at it. He's doing it a lot. So much to the point that he has his own style. He's become his own player. Can't compare him to, he's baby fed, he's baby Rafa, baby Joker. He's his own thing. And you see him jump up in the air like he's going to pound a big ground stroke, because sometimes he jumps up and he hits 100. He had a 110-mile-an-hour forehand in one of those matches in D.C., I remember. And it just looked effortless. Talk about easy power. He jumps up and pounds big ground strokes. He jumps up in the air and hits delicate drop shots. So my number two takeaway is, I always talk about how he's got some of the best hands. If you watch DC, and I really hope you did if you're a big tennis fan out there, you got to see just how good Nick Kyrgios is with the hands, because he was doing stuff like that constantly. And my number three thing, I don't even remember what it was, but I'll just tell you this. Here's a good number three to substitute for whatever it was I was thinking earlier today. He has so much potential star power. I remember thinking for years, if Monfils could get things together and just win more, he would be the most famous player on the planet. He'd be right up there with Roger and Rafa. Imagine if Monfils, not only with the incredible movement and all the crazy gets and all the fun you get in a Monfils match, imagine if he had the best serve in the world. He'd be like unbeatable. That's kind of what Nick Kyrgios is. If Nick Kyrgios really worked on his fitness and fully devoted himself to this great sport, tennis, he's virtually unbeatable. And if you're one of those people who you love Rafa and it pains you to think of Djokovic taking the slam count record away from Rafa or Roger, Nick Kyrgios is the only guy. We got some young guys like Felix Auger-Aliassime, but it might take him a few more years to fully mature and be someone that could stop Djokovic in his tracks as he dominates the sport. And don't get me wrong, Roger and Rafa, they can still do a lot to slow down Novak as well. But who's someone who can get real serious, and maybe even this year at the U.S. Open, definitely next year if he had a great offseason and really got focused? Who's someone who could stop Djokovic anywhere? Nick Kyrgios. With that said, let's go through our big stack here of tennis news. On top, Nick Kyrgios. I have proved that I can still produce at the highest level. Now, okay, that's one thing. This is from tennisworldusa.org by Zevad Mezic, by the way, but I like what he says in the bottom. And by the way, when we look at the draw, you're going to be stunned if you haven't really dissected it yet to see who Nick Kyrgios may be playing. This video will probably go up. Now, all I know is I just did this long intro on Kyrgios. He might lose in his first match. He's got Kyle Edmund, and we saw how banged up he looked. Maybe the adrenaline could have carried him through some of those matches, but you get to the next tournament, conditions are different after you played all these matches in one place. You go to a totally different place with new conditions, and you might feel pretty fatigued from all the tennis you just did in a championship run. We could very easily see, just like we saw with Alex de Minaur, another Australian who just won in Atlanta, and now the next two tournaments back-to-back, he goes out in his first match. It happens all the time. So if you're watching this video, I wouldn't be too down on Nick after he has a big win to lose early in Canada. Sometimes your injuries kind of catch up to you a day or two later after you were able to get through some matches on pure adrenaline. A couple days later, your body's kind of wrecked for like a whole week. That could happen, and I wouldn't fault Kyrgios for that. But let's go through this because this is what I like. this is a sign that maybe he's really working on the recovery. Maybe he'll do all right tonight. Like I said, this video is probably up after the match is over. It's been one of the best weeks of my life from a tennis perspective, says Nick. I feel like I've grown as a person. I'm getting better every day. This week means a lot. Obviously, it's great to get the win, but I've proved to myself and a lot of people who've backed me, I still have it and can produce at the highest level. Nick Kyrgios is like 23 years old. Still have it. Of course he still has it. You're in your early 20s. The sky's the limit of what you can do in your tennis career. Following his winning run in Washington, Kyrgios improved from 52 in the world to 27. He goes from outside the top 50, now he's top 30. Kyrgios insists ranking doesn't mean that much to him. At the end of the day, I don't care about rankings at all. It's just to grow as a person, as a human, and if that comes along, the tennis player will come with it. That's all I can do. Small habits every day, and I'm trying to get better. And I must have I have an app on my computer where I can take paragraphs out of articles that I think I don't need, so I don't waste, because some of you out there don't like the wasting of paper, so I don't waste as much paper. I must have cut it out, but one of the things that Kyrgios talked about was, of course he did the quotation marks, he talked about living clean. He talked about fixing the diet and fixing, the things you need to do, like a Nadal, Federer, or Djokovic especially. He's the king of it. All the stuff that you need to do to be legit on the tour and take care of your body so you can bring your best tournament after tournament. If it's true, if Nick's not blowing steam up our bums, or sounds kind of Aussie or British, if he's not blowing steam up the bums, this is a very good sign for tennis. As I always say, if Nick Kyrgios takes over the sport, it's going to draw in so many people to tennis. A great sign, and it'll make things pretty interesting because we already are interested to see the big three be the greatest ever. That's a lot of fun. Throw in a couple names who can really challenge them, and it gets even more exciting. And if you say, okay, it's an ATP 500, Matt, I'll debunk that real quick. Medvedev was playing incredible. Tsitsipas playing very well. Those two wins from Nick Kyrgios, and the way he did it, where it looked like, is his body going to make it? The serve speed's coming down. That's a death sentence usually when you see something like that. Kyrgios with the accuracy to still hit aces. Pretty amazing. We don't have much more time, so let's start racing through. I had another piece here on Nick Kyrgios, just to go with my number 3, why I think the guy should be, or could be so big in the sport. He could be such a big star, is because there's no one like him. I mean, like John McEnroe, who also had great hands and would let people have it in the crowd sometimes. This guy was heckling Kyrgios on the practice court, saying he had a Kyrie Irving jersey. He said, Kyrie's a bum. And Nick turns around right away and says, what did you say? Repeat that, mate? And the guy, very sheepish, is like, well, Kyrie Irving, you're wearing this shirt, he's not a very good basketball player, he's kind of a bum. Kyrgios responds, so what does that make you? What are you? There's more to it, but you get my point. You catch my drift. Who doesn't enjoy that? Even if you hate Nick Kyrgios, you gotta admit, that's pretty good. Hecklers in the crowd. I remember one time I was heckling someone when I was a lot younger at a tennis tournament, and I would have been not prepared at all if the player just turned around and said, why are you saying that? What's wrong with you? You're a freaking loser. Probably should have. Would have put my young self in my place. Because what do young people do, young men do? A bunch of dumb stuff. They need to be corrected and called out. All right, Duzi Lajovic speaks on favorites to win Montreal Masters. Another thing here, this is really about the big three, but it's also about Kyrgios, because he's the only other person right now who's this close to being able to beat anyone. He's the only player, other than Stan Wawrinka, although where is Stan Wawrinka health-wise? Novak Djokovic and third-ranked Roger are not playing, but Nadal's there. Duzi Lajovic from Serbia says, since Nole and Federer are not playing, we can say Rafa's the favorite because he won last year in Toronto, but again, we'll see if he's fully ready. This is his first tournament back after Wimbledon. Here's another thing. If the players are saying it, everyone knows it's true. On hard courts, he always has a bit of physical issues for the last few years. Very true. I mean, he's done it throughout his career, but it's gotten worse recently. Besides Nadal, says Lajovic, Kyrgios played very well in Washington. When normal, he can play well at any tournament. But again, you never know with him. There is not a clear favorite as there would be if Nole was playing, so the tournament is very open. Well, he's a Serbian. He's got to say that. So with that said, let's take a look at what we have in this draw. So Nadal is going to be playing Dirty Dan Evans up first, which will be a pretty fun match. Should watch that. Nadal, big favorite there, obviously. He could run into, I don't know if these matches could be happening right now. I think Radu Albat did win already pretty easily over Gilles Simon. Radu Albato or Guido Pella. Fonini is the big seed in Nadal's section. Who else? Borna Coric is there, of course. He's dangerous. Tommy Paul who will play Fabio Fognini. Tommy Paul's been pretty impressive lately. He's got a shot. The section below, we got Tsitsipas. We saw that, Nick Kyrgios was dealing with some little injuries. So was Tsitsipas, so we'll see how he's feeling. He will likely play Hubie Hurkacz, Rhymes of Latch, or Taylor Fritzy Boy, who had a good run in, where were they? Los Cabos in Mexico, losing in the final to Schwartz-Didi. Monfils is there, Batista Agut is there, Nishikori is there, Diego Schwartzman will have to get through Cecchinato to play Batista Agut, who took out Bernie Tomic 6-3, 6-2. I like Tsitsipas to come through and get our rematch. He played Nadal in the final last year. It was a big tournament for Tsitsipas. Got a lot of points to defend here because in D.C. he lost in the semis. That's where he lost last year. No gains. Sasha Zverev is down, though. Tsitsipas is our new number 5 in the world, thanks to Sasha Zverev. By the way, there was a story I saw. I didn't print it, but remember I said our spies on the ground had heard a rumor that Sasha Zverev did not play in D.C. despite being defending champion because he was asking for too big of an appearance fee. And I did see a story in the news that said some tournament, it might have been the director of the tournament, was saying, we got a new strategy now. Instead of going for some big names and offering them lots of appearance money, we took all that appearance money and split it up into smaller chunks and offered it to a lot of up-and-coming players. Our goal was, let's get the entire next gen out here. And I think that's a smart way for ATP 250s, ATP 500s to go from here on out. Bottom half of the draw, let's take a look. Karen Khachanov will play Stan Wawrinka, who continued Grigor Dimitrov's issues and problems and general sad time on the tour. Wawrinka took him down 6-4, 6-4, and what was a pretty fun match, actually. And he'll play Karen Khachanov next to get a Hatch 'em all, the Pokey Hatchery Master. Popsicle just got handled in the first set by Felix Auger. They're showing Toronto right now with Ash Barty, who's down a break in the first set. So I'm not sure what happened there, but my guess is Popsicle is toast. So Raonic will get Canadian Popsicle or Felix Auger all day. Aliassime, Raonic who handled Luca Pui, no problem. Basilashvili and the Struffster. Struffter took out Tsonga 6-2, 6-2. Cam Norrie, who I got to watch in Atlanta, will play Sasha Zverev. And that's going to be a tough match for Sasha Zverev, I think. I'm trying to remember, where did Sasha Zverev lose in Canada last year? We know where he went 2 years ago. He beat Federer in the final after Federer's back failed him. Here's where things get really interesting. Nick Kyrgios will play Kyle Edmund. It's a tough first match. We'll see where he's at. This match is only a few hours away. And if he gets through, he plays Danny Medvedev again. Medvedev said it himself, I really hope Kyle Edmund beats Nick Kyrgios. No one wants to play somebody with a serve like Kyrgios, not to mention how unpredictable he is in general. By the way, I had another article here. We'll have to do it tomorrow or do it on the bonus podcast because I'm leaving in 2 days to go to Cincinnati. So we might only have one more show before I leave town at best. So look out for a show tomorrow. Patron Saints, by the way, go to coffeebreaktennis / Patron Saints. If you're not a patron saint, please help the show grow. Go to patreon.com / coffeebreaktennis, and you will have the Patron Saint bonus CBT podcast. We may do a full show tomorrow, or we might just do a Patron Saint only podcast tomorrow. We'll definitely do something before we leave town. And of course, in Cincinnati, there will be shows, road edition shows. If you've been watching the show long enough, you know I like to have a lot of fun with the shows when we're on the road. If Nick could get through Edmund and Medvedev, he could play Christian Garin. He could play Big John Isner, who I think just beat Jordan Thompson like an hour ago. Dominic Thiem, El Chapo, Feli Lopez, Milkman Millman, a lucky loser here, Marin Cilic. All names on the bottom half of the draw. What do I see happening here? If Tsitsipas is feeling good, you saw a real heavy tape on the leg in his match with Kyrgios. And if he just recovers and bounces back like any old tournament, I think Tsitsipas gets through to Nadal. Not sure if Tsitsipas beats Nadal here, but I do anticipate a pretty competitive semifinal between those two. Fingers crossed that we get to see that. On the bottom half, it's tough to say with Nick Kyrgios. It all depends how the body is reacting to all the tennis he just played. If he can get through, I like him here, but I also like Medvedev. Really the winner of that match is who I see coming through this half. Karen Khachanov needs some good results. Maybe he can do it. We shall see. Dominic Thiem, of course, always a danger anywhere. And Stan Wawrinka. Would love to see Stanislaw, the Manislaw. We'll hang on to that. And we got time for one more thing, and then we're getting out of here, which is a shame because I had a lot of good stuff in here, including some article about who the true GOAT is. Spoiler alert, they're making the case for Novak Djokovic as the GOAT. We'll go through that soon enough. But today we got one last thing. Another player who could be dangerous here. We're in Canada. Maybe Shapo, although Shapo's been rough times for him. ATPTour.com, Andrew Eichenholz says, Andy Roddick explains why he feels Felix Auger is the next best prospect of the next-gen young guns. No one knew Auger-Aliassime who he was 3 years ago. Now all of a sudden he looks like the next best prospect. I wish he lived 1,000 miles further south. Something I look for is easy power with young players. I think most guys on the tour, if they set up and want to hit a ball hard, they can. They really, really great ones. You think of Roger. I think of a guy like Tomas Berdych. It doesn't look like he's swinging out of his shoes, but the ball kind of launches off his racket. Maybe you can't see that on TV, but you can feel it when you play against them. Very true. Tomas Berdych, he hits the ball very clean. I mean, it sounds so silly, but one of the best tips for people learning tennis is, hey, really watch the ball carefully. Like you see Federer watch the ball get hit, and then he still looks down. Really watch the ball carefully because if you can put the ball here on your ground strokes on the center of the strings, you will be stunned how much more your strings work like a trampoline and just the ball just flies off the strings like Andy Roddick says here. Felix seems to have that easy power. When he's going after a ball, it doesn't look out of sorts. It looks like the technique is pretty much the same, meaning if he hits it like a casual rally ball or if he's really going for a big shot, the technique looks pretty similar. Not like he's trying to force it or muscle it. Of course, Roger Federer is a great example. You look at how relaxed and calm he looks, and then maybe the Rafa shots are a little violent looking at times, but you better believe it. Rafa is extremely loose in the technique. That's key to generating a lot of power. Sometimes you see these guys get a little stiff when they go for too much, and then they start spraying some unforced errors. Things that will improve when you're young, when you're 18. Movement always gets better. Power always becomes more. It's just going to happen, says Roddick. And Felix already does both of these things pretty well. Looking at his serve last summer, I might get the numbers wrong, but I want to say it looked like a 115, 120 serve. Now all of a sudden you look at him this summer and it's looking like a 125, 130. It's starting to look like a real weapon, and it should be scary to a lot of people. People as in players on tour. Then they add a stat here. It is ATPTour.com after all. Auger-Aliassime currently ranks 11th on the ATP Tour this year in aces with 383. That's pretty freaking good for 18 years old. He's also inside the top 20 in first serve points won on the season at a clip of more than 74%. Good number. Another thing Roddick said was he sees common threads with current and recent legends of the sport in footwork. Already, Felix Auger is moving very well. If you look at guys that win early in their careers, you look at Hewitt or Roger or Rafa, all those guys moved very well from a young age. Don't forget Djokovic. It's certainly not a recessing asset. You get to 21, 22, 23 years old, and it only gets better. Hit the music because we're going to get out of here. So take it from Roddick. If you're wondering why is Felix so good or why do people like him so much, those are very good reasons to point out. Thank you for watching the show. Like I said earlier, there will be a Patron Saint podcast, or maybe we'll just do a full show tomorrow. Hey, if you're really desperate for a full show, comment below and beg Mr. Goat to tell me to go with the show over the podcast because I always listen to Mr. Goat. He has my ear, as they say. Keep a close eye on Nick Kyrgios' match tonight. Even if it's already over, if he lost, if he won, watch it because we may learn a lot. Commonly we see, just like we saw with Alex de Minaur, he wins Atlanta, a couple bad results. It happens all the time. If Nick is making progress in the mental department, we'll see him win or lose. If he loses, it's not a big deal to me. All I want to see is that he goes out there and tries really hard and he forces Kyle Edmund to really play ball if Kyle Edmund is going to win the match. See ya!